In the Rodamundos workshop, right in the heart of Mexico City, the air hung heavy with the reek of burnt oil and hot metal. The clamor of impact wrenches, testing engines, and the mechanics' loud voices wove a chaotic symphony that seemed to never cease. Amidst all these men in stained overalls, one almost went unnoticed. Martin. He was thin, with a serious face and hands perpetually caked in black grease. He worked in silence, hunched over old cars, while the others laughed and joked. Sometimes their whistles or guffaws included him, but never in a good way. "Move it, errand boy!" Gutierrez, one of the veteran mechanics, yelled, shoving him aside with his shoulder. "You're just in the way!" Martin lowered his gaze and stepped aside, swallowing the words that yearned to escape his chest. He knew he was worthless in that place. To everyone, he was the errand boy, the uneducated assistant, without a voice or a vote. A few meters away, Engineer Olvera, the workshop manager, wore a perfectly ironed white shirt with an expensive pen in his pocket. He looked at Martin with disdain every time he saw him. For Olvera, Martin was just another lowly grunt, brainless when it came to complex machines. That morning, a brand new truck had been towed to the workshop. The engineers surrounded the vehicle, brows furrowed. The engine wouldn't start, and the electrical system's screen displayed codes no one could decipher. It was a delicate job. The truck belonged to a company planning to sign $1 million contract with Rodamundos to maintain their entire fleet. Martin approached slowly, curious. He observed the loose wires, listened to the faint hum that pulsed on and off in the dashboard, and his eyes briefly gleamed with something akin to genuine interest. But before he could say anything, Olvera shot him a withering look. "Don't you dare come near," he said in a cold tone. "This is not for errand boys." Martin lowered his gaze, feeling the heat of shame rising up his neck. But as he returned to his corner, something within him burned silently. During lunch, the mechanics sat on metal benches, amidst greasy trays and hot sauce bottles. The topic of conversation was the same: the broken-down truck. "Not even 10 engineers can fix it," Gutierrez scoffed, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. "Can you imagine? What the hell would an errand boy like Martin know about those things?" Laughter erupted around the table. Martin, sitting apart with his sandwich wrapped in aluminum foil, listened in silence. He chewed slowly, not daring to look at anyone. "We bet Martin would get scared just by looking at the engine," another mechanic added, laughing. "He'd probably get electrocuted." Martin looked down at his hands, black with grease. Inside, something twisted with rage. Not just at the mockery, but because he was convinced that the truck had a much simpler fault than everyone believed. He had heard the codes the computer was throwing, and had seen cables connected where they shouldn't be. But he knew what the response would be if he spoke up. That same day, Olvera gathered the engineers around the truck. His tone grew increasingly tense. "If we don't fix it before Friday, we lose the contract," he said, looking from one to another. "And you know what that means for the company and for your jobs." Martin, a few meters away, pretended to clean tools, but kept listening. A tingling sensation ran through his body, as if something was pushing him to intervene. "Martin!" Olvera suddenly shouted in a mocking tone. "Why don't you come and tell us how to fix it? Surely you know more than us." The mechanics laughed. Martin swallowed. He took a step forward, barely opening his mouth. But Olvera raised his hand, interrupting him. "It's a joke, man. Go back to your screws." Martin stopped dead, feeling something break inside him. He turned away, but as he did, he couldn't help but murmur softly, "That truck isn't getting enough ground." Olvera heard him, but let out a dry laugh. Ground, please. Leave it to those of us who studied." Martin walked away, as the echoes of Olvera's and his colleagues' laughter seemed to reverberate throughout the workshop. However, that night, Martin couldn't sleep. He closed his eyes and kept seeing the truck, the cables, the error codes, and an increasingly intense premonition that he knew exactly what to do. Early that same morning, when the city was just beginning to light up with the headlights of delivery trucks, Martin arrived at the workshop long before his shift. There was no one there. The silence was so profound that even the hum of the light bulbs seemed deafening. He stopped in front of the broken-down truck. He observed it as one would an old enemy, sliding his hand along the edge of the hood with an almost irreverent respect. He took out his own tools, the few he had been able to buy with his meager salary, and began to dismantle panels, taking care to leave everything as it was, so no one would notice his intrusion. He checked every connector. He touched every cable. He listened to the faint click of the electrical connections. Suddenly, he found a ground wire barely held by a few metallic strands, vibrating with the slightest movement. "I told you so," he murmured softly, almost to himself. He was about to tighten it securely when he heard a door slam. He started and hid his tools under the engine. Gutierrez and another mechanic entered, joking, without noticing him. Martin backed away, breathing fast. If they discovered him tampering with the truck, he could lose his job. That day, Engineer Olvera was in a worse mood than ever. He paced the workshop, barking orders and reproaches. He even yelled at one of the engineers for being incompetent. Martin, meanwhile, couldn't stop thinking about the loose wire. When lunch arrived, Martin ate quickly and went out to the back patio. He sat on an old tire under the scorching sun, staring at the ground. Gutierrez found him there and crossed his arms. "What, errand boy? Planning how to save the day and make us millionaires?" Martin looked at him calmly. This time he didn't lower his gaze. "It's not hard to fix that truck," he said in a low voice. "It's a ground wire. It's almost broken." Gutierrez let out such a loud laugh that even the birds on the electrical wires flew away. "Yeah, right. Better keep cleaning oil filters. That's what you're good at." And patting him on the back, he walked away, laughing. Martin was left alone again, but something in his eyes burned with a mixture of determination and contained rage. That afternoon, as he was putting away his tools, Olvera glanced at him and said in an icy voice, "If you go near that truck again, you're fired." Martin nodded in silence, but inside, the decision was already made. Thursday night, the workshop was empty. Everyone had left with tense faces. The next day, Friday, was the deadline to fix the truck and save the $1 million contract. Martin lingered by the door, pretending to tidy things. He kept glancing at the truck as if it were calling him. The echo of Olvera's threats rumbled in his head, but also the growing feeling that he was letting something be lost by not speaking up. He waited until the workshop lights were completely off. Then, in the gloom, he approached with determination. With swift hands, he reopened the electrical panel. He found the loose, trembling ground wire. This time he didn't hesitate. He cut it and soldered a new section, securing it firmly. Then he checked fuses, connections. He cleaned oxidized contacts. It took him over 2 hours, working with a steady pulse despite the cold sweat running down his back. When he finished, he started the engine. The deep roar of the truck filled the empty workshop, vibrating like thunder. On the dashboard, the error lights disappeared one by one. Martin stood still, barely smiling. For an instant, he felt invincible. There it was. He had done it. The next day, Friday, Olvera arrived in a fury, convinced that the truck would still be broken. He stopped short, seeing it on, and running. The engineers crowded around, incredulously watching the engine. "What did you do?" Olvera asked, bewildered. Martin, still with solder stains on his hands, dared to raise his voice. "It was just a ground wire. It's fixed." An absolute silence fell over the workshop. Olvera looked at him with narrowed eyes. The other mechanics began to murmur. Gutierrez, mouth agape, didn't know what to say. For the first time, someone patted him on the shoulder. It was a young engineer who murmured, "Good job, Martin." Martin felt a strange warmth in his chest. For a few seconds, he believed his life was about to change forever. Olvera even forced a stiff smile. "Well," he said in a tense voice, "then I guess the contract is saved." Martin lowered his gaze, blushing, but happy. For the first time in years, he felt seen. That afternoon, rumors spread throughout the workshop. Martin had saved the $1 million contract. It seemed that everyone, even those who had previously humiliated him, began to treat him with respect. Some looked at him with a mixture of awe and curiosity. Even Gutierrez greeted him with a curt, "Good work." For a moment, Martin believed he had won, that he had finally been accepted. Monday morning, the atmosphere in the workshop seemed different. Everyone worked more quietly, casting curious glances at Martin whenever he passed. Even engineer Olvera greeted him with a brief nod, something unthinkable days before. Martin arrived early, with a straight back and a spark of hope in his face. He dreamed that perhaps they would offer him a better position, or at least official recognition. Mid-morning, Olvera gathered everyone around the truck. He held some papers in his hand and had a frown on his face. His tone was dry, almost cutting. "I want to make something clear," Olvera said, looking at each of the mechanics. "The success of this job is thanks to the engineering team. No one here acts on their own or makes repairs without authorization." Martin felt a chill, slowly lowering his hands, still stained with grease. Olvera continued, "There's an absurd rumor circulating that someone fixed this truck on their own. That's a lie, and whoever spreads those versions will face the consequences." The mechanics looked at each other, uncomfortable. Gutierrez, who had begun to respect Martin days earlier, now looked down. Martin swallowed, took a step forward. "Engineer, I just wanted to help. I didn't want to cause problems." Olvera looked at him coldly, and his voice resonated throughout the workshop. "Help? You're an errand boy. You're not an engineer. You don't have authorization to touch delicate machinery. Do you know what it would cost if you had damaged something? We could have lost millions." Martin felt the blood drain from his face. He wanted to speak, but Olvera interrupted him. "From today on, you are forbidden to touch anything you are not ordered to. And by the way, don't expect any bonus or recognition. This was an engineer's job, not yours." Murmurs filled the workshop. Some mechanics moved away from Martin, as if fearing to catch his misfortune. Gutierrez whispered, "I told you, you never should have gotten involved." Martin stood alone, under the cold white lights of the workshop. He felt everything he had gained in those days crumble. The looks of respect turned into pity or renewed contempt. As he collected his tools, he heard Olvera tell another engineer, "These types like Martin never know their place." Martin gritted his teeth. Inside, something in him burned more than ever. But this time, it wasn't hope. It was rage. Martin spent the following days working in silence. His presence in the workshop had become uncomfortable, as if everyone feared looking at him too long. No one talked about the truck. No one talked about what he had done. One afternoon, while cleaning filters in the farthest corner of the workshop, an older man appeared at the entrance. He wore a modest suit, thick glasses, and a worn briefcase. He looked around until he found Martin. "Martin Sanchez?" the man asked. Olvera, hearing him, immediately approached, interposing himself. "How can I help you?" "I am Engineer Olvera, head of this workshop." "No, I'm looking for Martin Sanchez," the man repeated firmly. Martin, heart racing, wiped his hands on a dirty rag and approached. "That's me. How can I help you?" The man opened his briefcase and took out some papers. His voice boomed through the workshop, attracting everyone's attention. "Mr. Sanchez, I'm from the heavy engine plant in Puebla. You worked there for 8 years as a specialist technician in industrial electrical systems. We have records of your interventions in heavy machinery and the improvements you designed, even without a university degree." Olvera's eyes widened in disbelief. "What did you say?" The man continued relentlessly. "We heard rumors that you fixed this truck here, and we want to offer you a position at our plant as lead maintenance technician. The salary is double what you earn now. In addition, we want to register the patent for the modification you made to the grounding systems in your name." The entire workshop fell silent. Martin could barely move. He swallowed, his eyes shining. Gutierrez murmured beside him, "Lead technician, patent." Olvera, red with anger, stammered, That can't be. He's just an errand boy." Martin looked at him, for the first time without fear. His voice came out firm, though trembling. "I didn't finish university, but I learned by working. And yes, I worked at the Puebla plant. I invented a couple of electrical solutions they used on the entire assembly line, but they didn't give me credit. I came to the city because I wanted to start over." The man with the briefcase held out his hand. "We want you back, Martin, this time with your name on the blueprints." Martin looked at him, not knowing whether to cry or laugh. Olvera, meanwhile, could only mumble, "This is a mistake." But no one in the workshop seemed to believe him. Everyone looked at Martin as if seeing him for the first time. The workshop buzzed with murmurs after the revelation. Mechanics clustered in small circles, speaking in low voices. Some looked at Martin with renewed respect. Others with a certain distance, unable to assimilate that the errand boy had turned out to be much more than them. Martin, meanwhile, was still in shock. He had spent so long hiding his past that he had almost forgotten who he truly was. Now, the words of this man from the Puebla plant echoed in his head. Olvera called him into his office. He closed the door with a bang and stood in front of him, face red, eyes hard. "Why did you never say anything?" Olvera spat. "Do you enjoy making us look like idiots?" Martin looked at him steadily. His shoulders, previously hunched, were now straight. "Because here, every time I opened my mouth, they silenced me," he replied without raising his voice. "Because I thought if they knew who I was, they would hate me even more." Olvera let out a bitter laugh. "And now what? Are you going to leave thinking you're better than us?" Martin took a deep breath. "I don't think I'm better than anyone, but I'm tired of being treated like I'm worthless." Olvera moved closer, almost pressing his face to Martin's. His voice was low, venomous. "If you leave, I assure you, you will never work in any workshop in this city again. I have contacts. I'll spread the word that you're a traitor, a liar, a guy who steals credit from engineers." Martin felt a knot in his stomach. For a second, fear almost made him back down. But he remembered the sleepless nights, the engine roaring under his hands, and the misery of feeling invisible. "Do what you want, engineer," he said in a firm voice. "I know what I'm worth, and now they do too." At that moment, the office door burst open. It was Gutierrez, pale but determined. "Engineer," he said, "everyone in the workshop knows it was Martin who saved the contract. If you try to screw him over, we're going to tell everyone." Other mechanics peeked from behind Gutierrez. They looked at Olvera with a mixture of defiance and disapproval. Olvera took a step back, suddenly aware that he had lost control. Martín, for his part, felt an intense relief. For the first time, he wasn't alone. The following Monday, the Rodamundo's workshop seemed like a different place. There was silence, but not the uncomfortable silence of the past few days. It was an expectant silence. Martín arrived early, his toolbox in hand. He wore the same modest clothes as always, but his step was firm, confident. As he entered, all the mechanics looked at him. For a few seconds, no one said anything. Then Gutierrez approached him. "Hey," he said, scratching his neck. "Well, thanks for saving our butts and sorry for, you know." Martín barely smiled. "It's nothing." One after another, the mechanics approached, patting him on the back. Some looked down, ashamed. Others shook his hand in a sincere gesture. Shortly after, the man from the Puebla plant arrived, with some papers in his hand. Martín looked at him, his heart pounding. "Are you ready to sign?" the man asked. "It's a good position, Martín. You'll be in charge of an entire team, and your name goes on the patent." Olvera then appeared, trying to maintain his composure. He looked at him with a tense smile. "Martín, if you want to stay, we could talk about a promotion, maybe even a bonus." Martín observed him, with a mixture of sadness and determination. "Thank you, engineer, but I've made my decision." He turned to the man from Puebla and signed the documents with a firm hand. The mechanics applauded. It wasn't a loud or spectacular applause, but it was sincere. Even Gutierrez, though through gritted teeth, mumbled, "You earned it, you bastard." Before leaving, Martín stopped at the workshop's threshold. He looked around. He took a deep breath and for the first time in a long time, felt proud of himself. He knew his life was about to change. He knew new challenges and greater responsibilities awaited him. But he also knew that he would never again let anyone make him feel invisible. As he walked out into the Mexico City sun, Martín smiled, with the distant echo of engines roaring behind him. Now the roar was his.